welcome to episode 11 of Game of Wines, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I'm Olivia.
I'm Gabby.
And I'm Chris.
And today we will be discussing Tyrion Chapter 1 in A Game of Thrones, so make sure you have read the chapter before listening.
But first, some news.
So excited for this.
Yeah. But first, in the news, because we're talking about Tyrion, Peter Dinklage, the actor, according to Far Out Magazine and himself, he apparently in the 1990s was in a punk band.
What?
Yeah. So it says in the article here, playing a blend of 90s punk, rap, and funk, the band he was in was called Wizzy. And according to Dinklage here, he says, I was pretty angry back then, and because of that, he was left with a permanent reminder of his punk days. He quotes, "We were punks, but we didn't play punk rock," Dinklage said on reflection. "It was a couple of friends from Columbia and a couple of friends from where I went to school in Bennington, Vermont. We got together and we just drank too much and played the old CBGBs. And we had a following."
Sounds like Tyrion.
Yeah.
It does.
They had a following. But it was like a progressive rock following. It was all guys that followed them, and for some reason, just dudes came to our shows. I felt a little.
Oh my gosh.
I felt a little bit like, what's the point of being in a rock band when there's no ladies?
Oh my gosh.
So that's pretty cool. But
that is cool.
Yeah, that's your news.
Okay, and then the Martin message. He says, "I write most days, sometimes into the evenings. At night, after supper, I read, watch television, or screen movies. I used to love going to the movies, since the best place to see a film is in a theater with an audience around you, but the pandemic has put an end to that for the nonce." I agree with that. A couple of things I have really enjoyed lately. Paris and I binged on HBO's adaptation of Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials when I was back in Santa Fe, and he loved it. Gorgeous production, great cast, and so much better than the feature film. Plus armored bears. Can't go wrong with armored bears. The world needs more armored bears. All the demons are cool too. Hate that damn monkey. If you're a Pullman fan, give this a look. And if you're not, watch it anyway. It may make you a Pullman fan. And for something completely different, there's Blinded by the Light, a lovely little feel-good film based on a true story about a Pakistani kid in Luton, England, who becomes the world's biggest Bruce Springsteen fan.
I've heard of that movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't. I think I've seen this one 4 times already. Every time the shift changes and a new minion arrives at my Fortress of Solitude, I watch it again so they can see it. When I am feeling down, this one brings me back up. The boss knows all the secrets of life. But hey, he's from Jersey. The music cannot be beat, and I like some of the choices the filmmakers made, like the lyrics coming up on the screen. With rare exceptions, I am not usually a big fan of musicals, but this one rocks, even if it counts as a musical. I haven't seen either of those.
I've heard of the other movie. I've heard of Blinded by the Light.
I've heard of, and you know what? I think I've heard of His Dark Materials, but I've never seen it.
It's on HBO, I think.
Yeah, that's what it said.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so our questions for this week. The first one was, were you a climber as a kid? Emily Grobel said, I tried climbing a tree once, but then I fell, so that was the end of that phase. Hannah says, yes, definitely. I climbed out of the crib when I was a baby, and I loved climbing trees, too.
I actually remember my mom and dad telling that story. It was pretty hilarious.
That does not surprise me.
No.
And Clayton says, I was not a climber as a kid. I was pretty sure I was going to break something if I did. That's pretty
Fair enough.
Solid thinking from the beginning. The second question is, have you ever fell into a conversation you were not supposed to hear as a kid, a.k.a. Santa? We said to keep it appropriate. So Emily says, I got a bike from Santa, in quotation marks, one year, and I guess I didn't act excited enough, so Mom asked if I saw the bike in her closet where she was hiding it. That was the end of Santa. So,
oh my gosh.
I don't know if you fell into a conversation more like you just gave up on it there.
Yep.
Hannah says, I've eavesdropped on conversations a couple times, but I definitely didn't hear anything that would put my life in danger. Yeah, okay, all right, yeah. And then Clayton says, if I did, my mom usually hit me with, there's ears in the corn, and ushers me out. That's pretty good.
That's a good saying.
The third question was, what do you think the man, or who do you think, do you think the man with the queen was? And Emily says, since Bran noted that the man looked a lot like the queen, I would suspect it's either her brother or someone related to her. Mm-hmm. Valid point. Hannah says, if they look like they could be a reflection in a mirror, then I definitely would say her siblings, if not twins. Gross. And
Gross.
Clayton says, I think it is Jamie. Yeah, I mean, I think we all pretty much do, but...
Yeah.
All right, thanks for the questions, and keep answering them, guys.
All right, so last episode we kind of got an inside look into Bran's mind. We learned how much he loves climbing in Winterfell, and he ends up hearing a conversation about his father in the position of Hand of the King. And then he got pushed out of a window of the tower, falling to the ground.
This episode, we join the Lannisters this time. Joffrey and Tyrion get in an argument. And then Tyrion joins the rest of the Lannisters and is discussing what has just become of Bran and the future of what they're planning on doing over some breakfast.
Alright, and for the wine for this episode, I don't have anything special. It's just Grand Traverse Select. It's a Sweet Harvest Riesling. I kind of just picked whatever this time around because Tyrion just kind of drinks, man. He doesn't care.
He drinks and he knows things.
He drinks and he knows things. He doesn't care if it's dry. He doesn't care if it's white. He doesn't care if it's red. Doesn't matter.
Well, it's pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah. It's very light.
Nice.
Yeah, I like Riesling.
Very light.
Rieslings are easy.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
All right. So we start off with Tyrion, and he said he had been reading all night in the library. He finally wakes up, and he notices that it's already dawn, so he gets up and then tells Septon Chael to put the books away that he was reading. Septon Chael is just the guardian of Winterfell's sept. So then he leaves the library and heads down the stairs, and he sees that Sandor Clegane and Prince Joffrey are talking. And he hears that Joffrey said he couldn't sleep because the wolf was howling all night. So in response, the Hound offers to kill the wolf for him. But not cool, bro.
Then I go fly.
No. Then Tyrion comes up in the middle of this conversation and says, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And then Sandor Clegane jokes with Tyrion. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from here in the book on page 87. It says, a voice from nowhere, Sandor said. He peered through his helm, looking this way and that. Spirits of the air. The prince laughed as he always laughed when his bodyguard did this mummer's face. Tyrion was used to it. Down here. The tall man peered down at the ground and pretended to notice him. The little Lord Tyrion, he said, my pardons, I did not see you standing there. So they were just kind of making fun of the fact that he was a dwarf, basically. Pretending that he couldn't see him and stuff.
More dwarf jokes.
Yeah. What's new? So Tyrion then, after that, looks to Joffrey and tells him that he has to go offer Lord and Lady Stark his comfort because Bran was severely injured after being pushed out the window. And then Joffrey kind of, after that comment, looks really disgusted and goes, well, what good would that do? What would I do by going and giving them my comfort? Which is kind of like a dick thing to say.
Yeah.
Tyrion says, well, it won't do any good, but it's expected of you as a prince.
Right.
And they've already said that they've noticed the absence of Joffrey, which probably isn't a good thing since he's a prince.
No.
Joffrey says that Bran doesn't mean anything to him, and then he says this quote, which really ticked me off. He says, I cannot abide by the wailing of women. Yeah.
Wow.
So Tyrion, after this, slaps him across the cheek.
Woo!
And he threatens to slap him again if he says another word. And then Joffrey goes, well, I'm going to tell Mother on you that you just hit me.
What a bitch!
So satisfying, though.
I know.
He needed that.
And then I'm going to read another quote from the book on page 89. Tyrion hit him again. Now both cheeks flamed. "You tell your mother," Tyrion told him. "But first you get yourself to Lord and Lady Stark and you fall to your knees in front of them and you tell them how very sorry you are and that you are at their service if there is the slightest thing you can do for them or theirs in this desperate hour, and that all your prayers go with them. Do you understand? Do you?" So, I love that. Like, Tyrion is telling the prince what's what.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be the slapper here.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to whip him into shape.
Like, and you can already tell
facts.
that Joffrey is kind of stepping out of his bounds here,
Yeah.
saying some stuff that he probably shouldn't say. And
Because he's an idiot.
yes, and I love that Tyrion is here to kind of put him in his place and like slap him back to reality, literally. And yeah.
Yep.
So after Tyrion hits him, Joffrey literally looks like he's about to cry, but manages kind of a nod in response, and then he runs off. Like the little bitch that he is, like I just said 5 minutes ago. Anyway, so once he runs off, Tyrion is left alone with Clegane. And they kind of have a little back and forth here.
I like his response.
The Hound, Clegane literally says, "The prince will remember that, little lord." Kind of like warning him. And Tyrion, Tyrion is just so, I almost want to say fearless. You know what I mean? Like
He
he's
really
just
doesn't
brave.
give two shits.
Yeah, and Tyrion literally came back with, "I pray he does. And if he forgets, be a good dog and remind him."
Very good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
I
that.
love that.
Literally, tell him what's what, dude.
Yeah.
Kind of putting Clegane
Someone
in his
has
place,
to.
too.
And then he kind of, after that, he asks Clegane, like, "Do you know where my brother is?" And Clegane tells him that he's over in the guest house having breakfast with the queen. So Tyrion heads out to the guest house where they're eating. He walks in, he sees Jaime and Cersei with Myrcella and Tommen, and they're all kind of speaking in hushed voices. Tyrion notices that Robin. I'm sorry. Tyrion notices that Robert isn't at the table, and he kind of says, like, "Okay, what's the deal? Like, is he still sleeping? Like, where's the king?" Cersei literally looks up with him with disgust on her face, which is like, dude, all he did was ask a question.
Like, relax.
Like, literally chill. You're alright. It's okay. You don't need to be a bitch, like, right off the bat. But she tells him that he hasn't slept all day and that he's with Lord Eddard. And they kind of, like, say that Robert is, you know, he's taking to heart what just happened to Bran.
Like, it's affected him.
Yeah,
Almost like
like,
it's his
he's
own
upset.
son, from
Yeah.
what I'm understanding. Yeah.
And Jaime chimes in, making a joke, because as we've kind of seen already, Jaime just kind of takes a life as a joke.
Yeah.
So Jaime's like, "Oh, he has a large heart, our Robert."
Kind of like sarcastically.
Going off
Yeah.
of his weight, even, like,
Yeah.
just being, like, a
He's just
jerk
being
about it.
sarcastic.
Yeah. And Tyrion, it's what I like about, like, all the separate chapters of, like, from their point of view is, like, that you kind of get a look into literally what they're thinking. And after Tyrion hears Jaime make that joke, he has the thought of, like, "Oh, I had all these years of my horrible childhood that I was mistreated by my sister, my dad, like, whatever." And Jaime was the only one that ever showed him any kind of affection or even, I mean, like, even respect. Like, he's the
Yeah.
only one that acted like he was actually a person. So, obviously, that kind of makes Tyrion a little more inclined to forgive him for basically anything. Which is kind of toxic. But at the same time, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't imagine being, like, mistreated by everybody my whole life and only having one person being nice to me.
Yeah, his
Right.
brother, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. So after that whole little interaction, a servant approaches and Tyrion's ordering breakfast, and we wanted to include his breakfast order because I kind of relate to it. He orders bread, 2 fish, a mug of dark beer, and bacon burnt until it's black. And I will just say, I love me some burnt bacon.
I will not eat bacon unless it's crispy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me want some bacon. But, you know, whatever. That was just me thinking about food really quick.
What's new?
But, is that a fat joke?
No, not at all, girl. You know I love me and my food.
I love food. But Tyrion turns back to his siblings, and he kind of, like, has that passing thought of, like, oh, they're twins, and they really look the part of twins, you know? Like, it's almost like they literally sit around and plan their outfits together. Because it says they're both wearing a deep green that matches their eyes, their blonde curls are falling around their faces, and they're both wearing gold jewelry.
Can you just imagine Jamie and Cersei, like, sitting there planning what they're gonna
That'd be
wear for
funny.
the day?
Honestly. Before everybody else wakes
Yes.
up. They're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
we should put this dark green on so that our eyes
today
pop.
it's gonna be green. Tomorrow we're gonna wear blue.
And if you wear orange, that's like forbidden because
can't sit
our
with us.
outfits will be clashing.
And on Wednesdays we were pink.
But yeah, so as Tyrion is thinking all of this, Prince Tommen turns to him and kind of asks if there's any news about Bran. And Tyrion tells him that he stopped by the sick room last night and that there hadn't been any change, but the Maester says that that could be a good sign. Hopefully he's not actually going to die, you know. Tommen then says, like, I don't want Brandon to die, which makes me so sad because obviously, as you guys know from last episode, the Queen was there when it all happened, when Bran got thrown from the window. So
Yeah.
she's sitting there listening to her kid, sad about his friend, but she knows that
Yeah.
she had part in it, and that
And it's
just-
clearly his friend because if you think back to the Arya chapter,
they were
Brandon
yeah.
and Tommen were sparring, and Brandon knocked Tommen on his ass. But
but they were
Tommen
buddies.
Tommen still likes him. They're
Yeah,
friends.
I mean, they were literally buddies. I mean, you just imagine, like, imagine your childhood friend. I mean, like, I'm sure
Yeah.
there were fights, and I'm sure there were this and this, but you love them.
Interesting
don't
side
wanna-
note too is this is what Ned wanted too, because Ned was saying that he wanted Bran to go so he could grow up with princes.
Yeah.
He wants him to grow up with
Tommen.
Tommen. He
Yeah.
wants them to be friends.
For sure.
But, so after that, Tyrion kind of notes that Tommen's a really sweet kid. He is nothing like his brother, Joffrey.
Yeah.
They're like complete opposites.
Yeah, and we haven't necessarily seen too much of either of the boys, but I mean,
We're getting
even
a slight
just
hint,
it's
though.
almost and it's almost
Yeah.
like just from hearing him saying like, "Oh, I don't want Brandon to die," like
Yeah.
you see that he's a lot softer than Joffrey, even from what we've already seen.
Versus Joffrey, who was like, I don't care about Bran.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, Joffrey literally doesn't care, you
Right.
know, and he's like, I can't tend to the wailing of women or whatever
Right.
he said. Tommen wouldn't have been like that.
No.
So it's just
By the
like
way, I know we
obvious.
haven't said this, but
Yeah,
Gabby's
sorry.
sister
Oh,
Lexi,
sorry. Lexi's here.
is joining us, so she'll probably be commenting a little bit while
Yes.
we record this.
Yep.
But after that, Jamie says Lord Eddard had a brother named Brandon as well. He was one of the hostages murdered by Targaryen. Must be an unlucky name. Tyrion replies, not so unlucky as all that, surely. And Cersei's kind of like, sir, what do you mean? What are you saying here? And I mean, Tyrion, being Tyrion, just kind of looks her right in the face and says, well, the Maester thinks he's going to live.
And from that, the first thing that's noted is that Marcella is happy about that. I know that Tommen was thinking of that, but now Marcella. So now you got two Lannister kids that are pretty.
Nice.
They're pretty nice.
Yeah.
and
Kids,
they
yeah.
like Bran. And they said Bran was a sweet boy before. So, and when she says that, Tyrion glances at Cersei and Jamie after he like drops that like, well, he could live. And they both clearly didn't want to meet his gaze, and Cersei immediately looks down at the table. And Cersei starts commenting about, well, if he were to live, that would be no mercy of the gods of the north to let this boy live. And Tyrion starts to ask, like, okay, so what the Maester says is that if he were to die, then he would have already done so. So at this point, he's lived this long. He's clearly going to pull through.
Yeah, I mean,
at this
his
point,
injury's
but
not
his back
bad.
is broken.
Yeah.
And so then Cersei then seems kind of upset at the fact that he's going to wake up.
Oh, Cersei's a bitch.
Yeah, and then so Tyrion kind of comments this, and this just kind of takes me on a side note, but I think this is kind of cool. Tyrion comments that the wolf is what's keeping him alive. And so he talks about how the wolf was outside of his room, howling this whole time, and then they kept shooing the wolf away, and the wolf kept coming back, and they shoot it away, and they kept coming back. So then they just shut the window to keep the wolf quiet, or to keep the noise outside. And they noted that when they shut the window to keep the noise outside, that Bran's condition actually worsened. And then once you could hear the wolf howling, Bran suddenly his heart rate increased and he was starting to feel better. So then they start commenting on when they're planning on leaving, and Cersei immediately chimes in and says, "Not soon enough." And Tyrion starts to comment about how he is thinking about going to the Wall with Benjen Stark. And Jaime, again, with his quick wit here, he starts commenting, he's like, "I can't imagine you joining the Black." And Tyrion says, this is just a great quote, he goes, "Me, celibate? The whores would come begging from Dorne to Casterly Rock. No."
I'm on my way, Tyrion.
He goes, "No, I just want to stand on the wall and piss on the edge of the world."
Oh my gosh.
So, just in his true Tyrion fashion,
He
he's
just wants
being
to
fun.
see the world.
No, he wants to piss off the end of the world.
Yeah, just to say that he did.
Just so he can say that he did that.
Yep.
So then they say that Ned, they're talking about leaving, and obviously Ned said he's going to be hand to the king, and they go, well, Ned's not going to leave with his son about to die, right? That would be really terrible. And they say, well, there's nothing he can do about it, so what's the point of him staying here? It's not like he can heal his son. And they go, well, Robert will command him to leave, and they said there's no way that Robert's going to command his best friend to leave his dying son and come
Right.
with him, right?
But, you know, we did talk about how, I know before in the last episode, or a past episode, we talked about how Robert isn't the same person as he was before. So maybe the old Robert that...
Robert would have commanded him to leave, I think.
No, old Robert would have said, like, I understand your son is sick, like, just stay. But now that he's king...
But I don't
feel
know.
like
And
it's
now that
different.
Ned is hand of the king,
Right.
he's like, your priority is to
Different,
me.
yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
The reason I don't think that is because they said Robert didn't sleep, and he's been by the
Well,
side, and
yeah.
he's taken it almost
Right.
like a personal
But
thing.
I still feel like he... Okay, but that's just still him being a good friend. But I feel like...
Yeah.
I feel like now Robert sees Ned's responsibilities first and foremost are
Yeah.
to him as the king.
Yeah,
You know?
I see that.
Yeah.
So then Jaime starts commenting about, like, well, if it was my son, I would end his suffering now because he would grow up as a grotesque.
That's kind of messed up.
And so Tyrion says that even if he lives a cripple's death, even if he lives, death is so final.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's like, he could live as a cripple or a grotesque, as you call it, and he could have still tons of possibilities.
Right.
That death is just so final. I like
Right. You
said,
can't
death
do
is so
anything
final.
if you're dead, but
Yeah.
if
You
you're
can't
alive...
take it back.
Right, yeah.
And then Tyrion says that he hopes he does wake because he wants to hear what he has to say. And you can tell Jaime doesn't like this. And Jaime's trying not to, like, meet his stare. So we don't know who the other person in the tower is, but it just seems like Jaime's pretty...
The guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like Jaime, the cards are falling here. And Jaime kind of looks at him and is... And, you know, kind of
Jamie, you
glaring.
got.
It said in the book that his smile was like hardening or something like that.
Maybe he felt like he was caught.
Yeah, he basically was looking at Tyrion, kind of being like, "Dude,
Like,
like,
stop.
shut up."
Like,
Right? Yeah. And so Tyrion says, "Brother, you slay me. You know how much I love my family." And that's how it ends.
You slay me.
Yeah, you slay me. You know how much I love my family. Okay, so our discussion questions this week is, these are some pretty just run-of-the-mill questions here, but I still want to hear your comments on it. First one is, what is your favorite breakfast?
Okay, my folks that do not live in Michigan will not know this. I mean, a lot of people probably won't know this. But if I were to get very specific, My favorite breakfast would definitely be from Colonial Kitchen. The breakfast bowl, not with sausage, with bacon, with Texas toast, and a cup of coffee.
Very nice.
Sounds really good.
Oh God, that sounds so good.
My favorite breakfast food is French toast. I like French toast and then maybe some like sausage links, and I really like fried eggs. And then some coffee and OJ.
Ooh, Gabby's got you all on some breakfast sandwiches.
Probably one of the best breakfasts I've had around here. This is a restaurant called Cafe Melly's, and they have a breakfast quesadilla, and it is bomb.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I normally, like, sour cream for breakfast doesn't sound good, but sour cream on that breakfast quesadilla.
I will have sour cream whenever.
Yeah, I
It's
love
like a
sour
big
cream.
stacking one.
Yeah.
It's really good. Our next question is, has a member of your family that's not your parents ever slapped you?
For like doing something bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Sorry,
a finger pointed
there's
here.
been a finger pointed because Lexi's not actually answering. She will answer on social media like y'all do, but she's sitting here listening to them and she's
So
already
clearly
pointing.
Gabby's the one doing the slapping.
Apparently I have smacked her before.
That's fair.
I do not recall.
Am I wrong? Really,
Yeah.
really.
Have you ever
Okay.
been slapped, Gabby? by someone that's not in
Honestly,
your family?
off the top of my head, if I were to choose anybody, probably Lexi. But even then,
That's hard.
if I'm being honest, I'm the older sister. I'm the older sibling. She very rarely beat up on me. I beat up on her. So if I were to think, I don't think anybody really did.
Liv?
I was gonna say, I don't think I got really slapped. I got spankings from my parents, but I know we said we can't talk about our parents. I might have gotten like my hand slapped or something.
Yeah.
But I don't really.
I don't think a lot of outsiders tried. In my
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
My grandma did. So my grandma slapped me across the face when I got sassy.
What did you do?
Says thing.
I don't know what I did. I think I backmouthed my mom, but my mom wasn't
Did you talk
close.
back?
She wasn't close enough. My grandma was. My mom didn't tell my grandma to do it, but my grandma did it. Because she was just that kind of old Southern kind of woman, I guess, trying to do that. So our third question is, if you could stay up all night reading, what book would you choose? Like Tyrion.
I would choose any of the Harry Potter books. I honestly could reread those all the time.
Yeah.
That, and I also really love the Percy Jackson books. That's a really good one. Yeah.
Gabby?
You know, here, I'm gonna consult my sister. Have you ever seen me, like, rereading a favorite book kind of thing?
Not rereading, but I feel like probably when you had Twilight the first time, you probably might have.
Yeah, I was really into the Twilight books when they first were a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Hunger
literally my
Games.
6th grade year, so that was years ago.
Yeah.
Probably when
There
I was
you go.
like 12. But if I had to choose now, I do think I would pick Game of Thrones. I know that that's super basic answer for the podcast, but
Yeah. It is.
it's like I almost think that like since I have watched the series and I've made it through the series now,
You want to get through the book?
I like to read the books, especially even the beginning parts that we've been getting through. Like, I remember those on the TV screen, and
Yeah.
they're different. You
Right.
know what I mean? So it's like once you know, and it could be the same thing with Harry Potter. Once you see the actual show or the movies or whatever fuck book it is. Ooh, I almost cussed. Whatever book it is, I like the fact that, like, I know people always say read the book and then watch the show or watch the movie, but I like to do it opposite because as I'm reading Game of Thrones, I'm seeing the stuff that was in the show that I already knew happened, but I'm seeing the little differences.
Agreed. Like, you get more detail. Like,
Yeah.
you get, like, not summary, but, like, the main, like, glossing
Yeah,
over it.
and
But
I
then you
can
get all of
read-
the details, like, filled in with the books.
Well, and there's literally already been nights where I'm sitting up reading the book for the podcast, and I literally have to stop myself.
Yeah.
It's like I can feel myself falling asleep, but I don't want to put it down.
If I had to choose, it probably would be The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a good book, and, like, that's one you could just get lost in. And you keep reading into it.
And George R. R. Martin said that he got his inspiration for Game of Thrones from J.R.R. Tolkien.
I just think,
I
yeah,
like it.
that's just a really good book. All right.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
All right, make sure you follow us on all of our social medias. On Facebook, we are Game of Wines, A Song of Ice and Fire podcast. On Instagram and Twitter, we are Game of Wines 1. And on YouTube, we are Game of Wines podcast. That is it for this week's episode. Next episode, we will be discussing Jon chapter 2. So make sure you read that chapter before next
Jon
episode.
Snow.
Thanks for listening.